the most successful media campaign of my entire career. We had over 500 million views of our content. Over 10 million people interacted with what we had to say, and it brought in almost 150,000 followers. And it almost broke my business. And in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what happened and how you can learn from my mistakes. Let's get into it. So I want to ask you a question. And you know what? You might think you know the answer to this question, but you probably don't. In your opinion, okay, which are the most important metrics to track in order to scale a coaching business or a business where you are providing a service? In your opinion, which are the most important metrics to track? Ah, here we go. That looks good. All right. I won't leave you hanging. There are really only three important metrics that predict revenue: conversion rate, close rate, client lifetime value. We'll talk about all these mean more specifically as we get into this presentation, but these are the things you need to know. So keep these in mind. Conversion rate is how many people actually opt in to hear more from you. Close rate is how many people actually decide to work with you. And your client lifetime value is how much an individual is worth to your business over the extent of their relationship. I see people in the chat here. Nice. Nice. Hey, told you I'd make it, fam. Nice to see you, brother. Good to see you. So let's get into it. Let's talk first about conversion rate. So it's pretty simple. It's just the percentage of people who see your work and then opt in to book a call with you or to hear more from you. And I'll share with you what this looked like in our viral experiment. Okay. So last year, I ran this experiment from November 2024 to June 2025. And the experiment was based off a simple hypothesis. I wanted to understand if I could use viral traffic to siphon off people from the general public, because there's so many of them, and be able to find those who actually cared about our products and services for our business, which supports business owners and people who want to become authors in finding customers and creating customer relationships through books. I want to see if I could create enough viral traction or traffic online, rather, through um, through viral memes to get at least some people to hear what I had to say, to hear what my company had to say. And you can see, I mean, this this moose video got about 47 million views. It has over a million likes. This one got, I don't know, 30 million views. I have tons of these like this. It's not really important what they look like. It's just crazy that these actually get so much traffic and attention. I don't really know why, but it's interesting to see that. And so the results are pretty interesting too. You could see this is the most views I've ever done on any platform ever. So 520, I'm sorry, 520 million views, okay, million with an M, um, almost 10 million interactions, which is like a like, a share, or a comment, and 147,000 new followers. So this is just an absolutely insane run for our business. Now, what's interesting about that is it really didn't do as much as you'd think it would do. Just of a show of hands here. Let me take this down. As a show of hands on the digital screen, what do you think the results were from creating 500 million views, 10 million interactions, and 150,000 new followers? This was on Facebook and Instagram. What do you think the results were for our business? How many opt-ins do you think that we got? How much money do you think that we made? What was the overall effect on the business? I mean, I would have thought that this would have made quite a bit of money. I would have thought that it would have made quite a bit of traction, and the traffic would have made a difference just because of the sheer size of it. I've just never seen that much. Well, let me show you what it actually did. The numbers don't lie. So we made exactly $2.97 from Facebook, from Meta, from this campaign. We had fewer than 10 email opt-ins in 6 months from this campaign, and we generated $0 in our business, which is crazy, sad, interesting, funny. And by the way, those 500 million views on Facebook would have been worth about $2 million on YouTube, but Facebook doesn't pay their creators. Facebook and Instagram don't pay their creators. So interesting. The big lesson here is that profitable customer acquisition is a game of quality and not quantity. So you don't just want traffic, you want the right traffic. This is what is so important. Okay. So if you're talking about building a business around helping people, serving people, consulting people, coaching people, training people, it's not about the number of leads you're getting, it's the quality of those leads. And sometimes I think the first thing we look to do when we're trying to grow the business is to get more people to see the business, more eyeballs on it. But that's not really what generates the bottom line, which is revenue. So if your conversion is low, if you're not getting people to opt in to what it is you have to say, or you're not finding people are connecting with what it is that you're sharing, then there are a couple of things you can do. One, you can make the lead magnet much more specific to your ideal customer profile. So for instance, I mean, a good example is literally just this presentation right here. I'm specifically talking to coaches and consultants and trainers, people who have a business that serves people and who already have some success, but are looking to figure out what the leak is. And by being specific with that problem, we can make better lead magnets. So for instance, at the end of this, I'll share there's a tool that we made, a software tool that you can use to identify the leak in your business. It's a revenue leak calculator. And it's a very specific tool. If you didn't have a business, like a coaching or a training or consulting or expert business, this tool would make sense. So the lead magnet itself is specific and it creates a better barrier for people to opt out or opt in. The lead magnet itself should also solve whatever the problem it is, whatever the problem is that you're generating in uh, your marketing. You're agitating the problem by talking to people about the things that they want to change, work on, grow, develop. And as you agitate that problem, what you serve them with in the lead magnet should be the next piece of that puzzle. It should solve a problem and then open a new loop. It should close one loop and open another. So it shouldn't just be a summary of what you've already talked about. It shouldn't just be a checklist. I mean, checklists can be okay, but that's level one stuff. You want to solve a problem and you want to make sure that you're mentioning whatever it is that you're offering several times throughout your content, not just in the beginning or the end, and that you even test the title of it. So for instance, if I made a productivity guide versus a productivity guide for busy moms, it could be the same productivity guide, but the positioning of it in the name changes the level of interest in it. So that's important to remember. Naming makes a difference. So those are good things to test when you're talking about conversion. Now, conversion is only the first part of the funnel. You saw I got 500 million people to come through, and we could have converted them a lot better. But what happens when you actually get people to sign up to an email list, to book a call, to create some sort of action on your side? Well, you have to actually close them. That's the next piece of this. Let's talk about close rate. All right. Here's another experiment that I ran. I call this one the scholarship campaign. Now, this was a very interesting campaign. We ran this last year. And the whole idea was we were going to give, or we actually ended up, we did give one person a $250,000 publishing package, which includes all of the services and the products and the software and everything behind publishing a book with New Wave Press, which is my company, my publishing company. And this is really interesting because the conversion from eyeballs to interested party was much higher than in my viral campaign. I'll show you what the differences were. So on this campaign, we only had 71,000 eyeballs, just about 71,000 eyeballs, and we only had about 1,300 people hit our landing page. So we spent $1,500 to get those 71,000 eyeballs. Those 1,300 people hit the conversion or hit the landing page. It's about a 2% conversion rate. From those 1,300, we got 180 applicants. So, decent application conversion, but not that great, under 15%. We qualified about a third of those, and over 80% of those showed up. We ended up having 40 calls that we held of 178 applicants, and only one of those calls closed. Now it was an $80,000 close. So what's interesting is we spent 1,500. We made 80,000 in sales, but even though that ROI is incredible, 53x ROI, the fact that the conversion was so low means that this model is not scalable. This ad's not scalable because it took us 40 to 60 hours with the wrong types of prospects to find the one that we wanted to work with. And every hour that we're spending with someone who is not the right fit for our company is taking away that same amount of time from someone who could be the right fit because our targeting is off. So people would look at this and say, well, that's great. You made money. But although the ROI was great, if you really factor in the time of our team, people who are closing, if you give them an hourly rate, if you give me an hourly rate and my co-founder an hourly rate, it actually brings down the ROI significantly. So this is only the ad spend, but the real ROI is much lower, and it's because the conversion is not high. So that's something that has to do with close rate. Now let's dig even deeper into that and see how we can improve this for the next time. Healthy close rates, if you know what you're doing, are around 20 to 30%. If they're below 20, you want to look at why that is. And if they're above 40, the reality is you might be underpricing yourself. And that's a good problem to have. But if you're closing too much, then you need to look at the fact that your offer is actually valued more in the marketplace and you need to raise your prices. But use these benchmarks to diagnose kind of what's going on with your close rate. If it's below 20, take a look at it. 20 to 30 is good. That means for every 10 calls, you're closing two or three. And obviously, if you're a great closer, you'll do more than that. And if you're still working on it, you'll do less. But you should look at it, within these ranges. Drilling down more, Google did a bit of research several years ago when we were just getting really into online shopping. So this has been about 20 years ago, several years ago, about 22 decades ago. Google was learning how humans function in online shopping environments. And basically, what they found is that it takes about 7 hours of interaction with a brand before trusting them with a multi-thousand-dollar decision. And so I decided to put this theory to the test using long form content to generate those hours of interaction before pitching people essentially and seeing how that would affect my conversion and my sales process. So this was really interesting. So here's another experiment. I used a book as a client acquisition tool, as a vehicle for client acquisition, which is ultimately what we ended up doing at New Wave, which is helping people install books into their businesses to use as client acquisition. Here are the real life numbers when we did this. So when I launched this book, The True Artifact, this is my book. It's a philosophy book. We sold 1,000 copies at launch, which is not a lot. That initial sale of 1,000 copies made about 20 grand in profit. Each reader spent about 4 hours of time, 4 to 7 hours. I'm estimating there, but about 4 to 7 hours of time with all that related material, including getting the material, opting into it, reading the supplemental stuff, reading the book, interacting, stuff like that. From those 1,000 initial readers, 40% booked call, or I'm sorry, 4% booked calls. So that's 40 booked calls. 40 of those calls were turned into 20 sales. So it's a 50% close rate. Now, that's a really good close rate, and you could definitely say raise your prices. We booked 20 calls, or I'm sorry, 20 clients from those initial 1,000 readers. The program was $25,000. Then you add the book sales to that. So it's a $520,000 revenue result from that campaign. And fewer than 1,000 people saw my offer, which means we had about a $500 revenue per lead metric. Now, this is really interesting because it's obviously way different than what we saw with the scholarship campaign, and especially with the viral campaign, right? Really interesting. And so this is the 7-hour rule in action. If you look at our scholarship campaign, um, low conversion rate, only 2.5% of people converted from absorbing the content to buying from us, right? And that's because there was really only 2 to 3 minutes of them getting to know the material before they bought. And we made 80 grand, but it cost us 60 hours of highly paid professional time. Now, if you look at the book campaign, half of those leads closed. We closed 20 of those. Each one of those leads spent 4 to 7 hours with the material beforehand. And that was a $520,000 campaign. Many, many fewer people saw the book campaign than saw a scholarship campaign, but the conversion rate and the close rate was much, much higher. The revenue was much, much higher, and the leads were much higher quality. So it's really interesting to see how that worked. And what I took from this is that although those offers were different, and I will say, look, those are different offers, different avatar, different timing, but I'm trying to look at the similarities here and understand what the trends and the common denominators were. And one of the biggest factors on the close rate and the revenue was just the time spent with the brand before the sales call. If you spend 4, 5, 6, 7 hours reading from someone first, you're going to be primed to go into that sales conversation ready to work, right? So if your sales aren't closing, there's a couple things you can do. You can add disqualifiers. You can be crystal clear on who this is not for. So you can try to get people to jump ship. It's actually better if you get people to disqualify themselves, because when they disqualify themselves, uh, it just makes it easier for you to determine who your ideal people are. Like sometimes we get so busy explaining who it's for that we don't disqualify people who actually do need to be disqualified. And disqualification is actually good because it makes more room, more time, more bandwidth for the best people. And of course, in your content, before you ever um, get people to a sales conversation, you want to answer the most critical objections in the things you say in the free material. And it's really pre-qualification that makes sales processes easier. Um, when you think about personal, like human performance, a lot of times you'll think about, oh, I want to have a better morning routine, right? Well, your morning routine starts the night before. It starts with your bedtime. And so your sales calls start before the sales call. They start with the pre-qualification, with all the messaging people get before they get to the sales conversation. And so it's really important to remember that and think about that in all the marketing that you produce, because a um, it's going to create a smooth runway for people to be onboarded into your systems and feel like it's a natural next step to uh, improving their situation and solving the problem that they already know that they have. Um, there's a copywriter who once said, um, "Great copy is entering the prospect's mind during the conversation that they're already having with themselves," and that's kind of what you want to do. I think it was Claude Hopkins who said that. All right, let's get back to it. Let's talk about CLTV. This is the second, or I'm sorry, the third of the three major metrics that you need to understand in order to really, really scale a business, especially when it's a expert-based coaching, consulting, training type of business. You got to understand these things. Okay, so another experiment, finding my 1,000 true fans. Kevin Kelly, former editor at Wired Magazine, has this great philosophy on 1,000 true fans, and just the idea that you only need 1,000 people who really care about what you have to offer to support you as a creative person for life. And I wondered if I could create that. And I launched my first book, Rich 20 something, uh, almost 10 years ago now. And I've noticed that that really is true. 1,000 true fans. I believe that hypothesis is quite true, but I wanted to test it for myself. And CLTV, which is the abbreviation for customer lifetime value, really comes down to everything that happens in that relationship with the client leading up to that. So it's the initial purchase, it's whatever upsells, upgrades they get, it's renewals, it's retainers, it's any way that you are giving value to your customer over time. And we should always be thinking about things from a CLTV perspective because it really changes the business model. Here's an example though. If I look at, for instance, a $20 book sale, they start at $20, right? And once they read that book, they decide to invest in the programming, of course, because why wouldn't they, right? The program itself, and by the way, this is a small percentage of people. Most people don't take the plunge. When you talk about conversion from step to step, there's a huge drop off. So if you have 100 people who read the book, you might get 2 people who would decide to take your program and then take the next step, take the next step. So you need a good amount of people on the front end. But let's say you had 1,000 people. Now 2% is 20. So now you have 20 people take the program. So you see how at every step you'll get a lot of drop off, but the value goes up. So the number of people that uh, that interact with each step goes down, but the value of those people goes up. Because if they spend 20 bucks on a book, and then they spend $2,000 on a digital program, then they spend on the next rung $12,000 on a 6-month group program, for instance, and then they spend $50,000 on a one-on-one after that. This might be over the period of 1 to 5 years. It doesn't happen all at once, but the number of times I've seen people go from a book to a program to some sort of experience to some sort of customized solution just from my Rich 20 book has blown my mind to a point where it has proven this model for me, and it's just because of time and trust. And this is how you take a $20 sale and turn it into a $62,000 customer lifetime value. And this is really the golden goose, right? This is really the secret. And if you're thinking about your business from a customer lifetime value perspective, instead of a one on like a one-time transaction, it's going to change how you position and how you operate your company. So if your CLTV is low, there are a lot of things you can do. The first thing is, well, and obviously you should be doing this anyway, but you need to build a back end offer. I've made this mistake before where I've built a great front end with no back end, and you just can't maximize. You can't maximize if you don't have a great back end. So you have to. You have to systematize and ask for referrals. So that just means ask the people who you're already working with to send more people like them to you. And if they're really happy with your service, they will systematize it and raise your prices strategically and regularly. Like I said, if you're closing really, really well, then don't just celebrate with a pat on the back, celebrate with a price raise and go incrementally 10%, 15%, and raise the price until you get to a point where your conversion rate is solid, but to a point where you know that people are heavily qualifying themselves and they're the right type of people for where you are in the industry right now. As you gradually move up in terms of your expertise and your positioning, you'll want to be raising your price anyway. And so the customers that you're signing need to be in alignment with where you are and where you're going, not where you have been. So just to quickly review this, here's a recap. These are the three metrics that predict revenue. Okay. Conversion rate, which is how many people that see your work opt in to hear more from you. Close rate, which is the percentage of qualified leads who actually become clients. This takes a lot of trust and engagement. And then there's, of course, customer lifetime value, CLTV. So this is a total revenue generated from that relationship. And these are the three KPIs you need to know. You don't need to know views. You don't need to know likes and shares and comments. You don't need to know subscribers and follower count. You really just have to know these three numbers. And what we did is we made a free calculator. So there's a revenue leak calculator that I'm going to put down below in the comments in the description box. It's a simple little software tool that we created for you, and you can use this to input your customer data or your not your customer data, but your KPIs. And this piece of software will look at the ranges for what KPIs should be within your industry and give you precise feedback on where you can improve those numbers and some specific things you could do to make those fixes happen quickly in your business. You can download it for free, or it's not even download; it's just a direct link. You can use it for free. It'll be in the description box, and that's it. If you like these type of videos, then let me know by liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment about what you want to hear more about next week. And I'll look forward to hearing from you soon. And by the way, just so you know, we're going to be making something pretty special for you. That's coming up at the end of the month. Stay tuned.